They say some people enter our lives and everything shifts, yet from a Stoic perspective, it is not truly them that we remember. What stays is the spark of our own soul they quietly awaken. This is not a story about romance or heartbreak. It is about awakening, the kind that shakes your foundation and refuses to let you return to who you were yesterday. It rarely happens because someone says something profound or performs a grand gesture. Instead, their mere presence touches a truth already buried within you, a part of yourself that had been asleep for years. The Stoics called this the inner citadel, a sacred, untouchable center that exists in each of us. Most people live their entire lives at the gates, never stepping inside. But sometimes, without warning, someone appears who does not knock politely. They speak directly to what is already alive within you. And in that moment, you do not merely see them, you begin to see yourself, perhaps for the first time. That kind of presence does not fade quickly because it was never shallow to begin with. It did not live on the surface, it lived in the soul. If you have ever felt someone linger in your thoughts long after they left your life, you know this. If you have wondered why a brief encounter refused to die quietly in memory, stay with me. Because what we are speaking of is not romance, it is recognition. As a Stoic, I believe these moments reveal the true work of philosophy. They show us how deeply unexamined our lives can be. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Yet many of us wait until another person shines a light into our darkness before we even begin to look. We mistake their role. We think they came to complete us, to give us answers. But in truth, they came as mirrors, reflecting back a part of ourselves we were not ready to face. This is why such people are unforgettable, not because they were flawless, but because they disrupted the illusion that we already knew who we were. They stirred clarity or confusion, or often both. And this friction does not fade quickly, because friction creates movement. The Stoics knew this. Growth is rarely born of comfort. It is born of disruption. Carl Jung described the unconscious as a reservoir, not just of forgotten memories, but of truths never fully seen. When someone stirs that reservoir, they do not simply become part of your story. They become part of your structure, not just a name or a face, but a living memory of what was once buried and now refuses to remain silent. This is why some connections echo across time. Plato wrote that every soul has a companion, cut from the same cloth, longing for reunion. Not every meeting is eternal, but some feel like remembrance rather than discovery. That uncanny familiarity that makes no rational sense. The comfort of presence that requires no explanation. These are not accidents. They are the moments when something ancient recognizes itself in another. And when you awaken that recognition in someone, you do not simply pass by, you remain. Perhaps not physically, but emotionally, psychologically, even spiritually. Because to them, you were not just another person, you were the one who made them feel both at home and unsettled at the same time. And so the presence lingers, not because of romance, but because of recognition. Because someone finally felt what it means to stand in front of a mirror that does not flatter, but reflects. This is where Stoic practice becomes vital. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself daily that death could come at any moment. He did not write this to frighten himself, but to strip away illusion, to see clearly, to remember that presence, not performance, is what shapes the soul. When someone awakens you, they are not saving you. They are reminding you. They are calling forth the part of you that belongs to the inner citadel, the part no chaos can touch, the part that has been waiting quietly for recognition. From my own reflection, I can say this. Such encounters are less about the other person than they are about the state of our own soul. We often assign too much power to them, when in truth, the power was always within us. They simply lit the lamp. And once lit, the soul does not easily return to darkness. This is the presence we are diving into today. The kind that unsettles not with noise, but with clarity. The kind that does not live in performance, but in essence. And so I ask you, have you ever met someone who felt like both a homecoming and a disruption? If you have, understand, what you are remembering is not them, but yourself. Part 2, the resonance of presence and the mirror effect. Why does someone stay with us even after the story has ended? Long after the last word was spoken, long after life seemed to move forward, their presence remains, quiet, invisible, yet undeniable. It is not because of an unread message or the absence of closure. It is because the connection was never superficial. You did not just cross paths with them, you stepped into something deeper, beneath logic and labels, into the realm where meaning lives. Carl Jung described the unconscious as a vast reservoir of truths never fully acknowledged. When another person stirs that reservoir, something dormant awakens. And when it awakens, they do not simply become a memory in your story, they become part of your foundation. Not merely a face or a name, but a symbol, a reminder that something inside you had been waiting to be uncovered. The Stoics often spoke of how our perceptions shape reality. Epictetus taught that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we attach to them. So when someone lingers in our thoughts, it is rarely about what they did or said. It is about how their presence landed within us, how it reverberated in places we usually keep silent. This is why it is not always the loudest or most constant person we remember. It is the one who struck the deepest chord, the one whose silence still echoes as powerfully as their words once did. Their significance was never about performance, it was about resonance. Plato believed that every soul carries within it the memory of a greater wholeness, and that when we encounter certain people, it is not recognition of them as much as remembrance of ourselves. This is why some connections feel timeless, as if we did not meet them for the first time, but recalled them from some deeper place. Their presence awakens familiarity that defies reason. As a Stoic, I see this as the soul reminding us of truths we had neglected. Sometimes these truths are comforting, other times they are unsettling. But either way, they refuse to be ignored. This is why such encounters live on. They are not simply people, they are mirrors. And mirrors do not offer answers, they offer reflection. Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living, yet examination is rarely something we pursue on our own. More often, it is triggered by friction, a word, a silence, an energy that unsettles us just enough to wake us from the slumber of habit. You may not have asked for it, you may not have wanted it, but once you have been stirred, there is no returning to blindness. I have felt this myself. There are people who cross my path not to stay, but to disrupt. And in their disruption, I found clarity. They did not give me peace. They gave me questions, and those questions became the beginning of wisdom. Because real growth begins not when we have answers, but when we can endure the weight of questions. That is why their presence lingers, not because you are clinging to the past, but because you are still trying to understand the part of yourself they revealed. They held up a mirror, and in that reflection, you saw something raw, something you had avoided or buried. It might have been fragility, or hunger for connection, or the ache of being unseen. Whatever it was real. And once revealed, it cannot be unseen. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." This is why the presence of another can feel disruptive. They did not give you something to chase, they gave you something to face, and facing is far more difficult than chasing. Chasing is about escape, facing is about truth. From a Stoic lens, this is the essence of awakening. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to waste time wishing for an easier life, but to wish instead for the strength to bear the one he already had. When someone awakens us, they do not soften life. They sharpen us. They confront us with a reality we may have ignored. And in that confrontation, we are either broken or strengthened. The choice is ours. This resonance, this mirror effect, explains why certain people become unforgettable. Not because they were flawless, but because they reached into the unspoken places of your soul. They forced you to examine, and examination is the beginning of philosophy. The Stoics never sought to escape disruption. They saw it as training. Just as a sword is not forged without fire, the soul is not shaped without friction. So when someone unsettles you, do not see them as a thief of peace. See them as a catalyst for growth. The presence that forces you into deeper honesty is a gift, even if it does not feel like one at the time. Here is what I have come to understand. The people who awaken us are not always meant to stay. Some appear only briefly, but their brevity does not lessen their impact. A spark does not need to burn long to ignite a flame. And once lit, that flame belongs not to them, but to you. So why does someone linger in your thoughts? Because their presence was never about them. It was about you, about the truths you could no longer deny. And that is the work of philosophy, to strip away illusions, to awaken clarity, to lead us back to the inner citadel we so often neglect. If someone stirred you in this way, do not waste time romanticizing the person. Recognize instead the lesson. Ask, what part of me did they awaken? What truth did they reflect? Because the goal is not to hold on to them, but to hold on to the clarity they revealed. That is the Stoic path, not clinging to others, but using every encounter as fuel for wisdom. Some people come to entertain, some come to accompany, but a rare few arrive to awaken, and it is awakening that transforms us. Part 3, the unavoidable confrontation and transformation. There is a particular kind of presence that does not ask for permission. It does not wait for the right moment. It slips into your life quietly, like a breeze through a half-open window, and then suddenly it echoes like thunder in the soul. One moment you feel steady, composed, in control. The next you are unsettled, not by chaos, but by clarity. This is the paradox. What unsettles you is not their words or even their actions. It is what those words and that presence carried. It is the silence between sentences, the unperformed authenticity, the way they existed without trying to impress. That is where the shift happened, in the unspoken. The energy you felt in their presence was not loud, but it was undeniable. Something stirred, and from that moment on, even if everything outside looked the same, your inner world had already begun to change. You see, they did not give you ease. They gave you a mirror. And a mirror, if it is honest, does not reflect the mask you wear for the world. It reflects your truth. It shows you the fragility you try to hide, the hunger for connection you disguise with busyness, the ache of being unseen even when you are surrounded by people. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that is exactly why such presence feels so disruptive. They did not give you something to pursue. They gave you something to face. And facing is terrifying because it is honest. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus warned that no man is free who is not master of himself. But mastery cannot come without first seeing the disorder within. To face yourself honestly is to discover how much of your life has been performance, how much of your peace has been distraction, how much of your strength has been avoidance. When someone awakens you, they reveal the gap between who you pretend to be and who you really are. This confrontation is not gentle. It shakes the foundation. And often the first reaction is retreat. Many people, when confronted with this kind of awakening, run. Not because of you, but because of the mirror you held up. They run from the sudden awareness that they are not as finished, as whole, as composed as they once believed. But avoidance is not healing. Avoidance is only postponement. The soul does not forget what cracked it open. It waits. It lingers. It returns in quiet moments, whispering reminders. The conversation may be over. The person may be gone, but the truth remains. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. As a Stoic, I have learned not to fear this disruption, but to embrace it. Marcus Aurelius said, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." For me, this means that awakening, even when it comes through discomfort, is a gift. It brings me back to what matters. It strips away the illusions I built to feel secure. It reminds me that time is short and there is no use pretending. When someone awakens you, they are not your savior. They are not there to complete you. They are not responsible for healing the void they revealed. Their role is far simpler and far more profound. They are a catalyst, a spark, a question, and questions that matter are rarely easy to sit with. This is why such presence is unforgettable, because it was not about them at all. It was about you. It was about the truth they stirred, the mirror they placed before you. Even if they walk away, even if you never speak again, the lesson remains, and the lesson belongs to you. Plato wrote that the soul does not learn truth, it remembers it. This is why these awakenings feel so strange. It is not as though someone has taught you something new. It is that they have reminded you of something ancient, something you already carried within, but had forgotten how to access. Their presence triggered remembrance, and remembrance cannot be erased. The Stoics taught us to view every disruption as training. Just as athletes train their bodies with resistance, the soul is trained through challenges. So when someone unsettles you, recognize the training. Do not cling to the person. Do not dwell on their absence. Instead, focus on the truth they forced you to see. That truth is the real gift. I can tell you this from personal reflection. Every time I was disrupted by another's presence, I discovered something essential about myself. Sometimes it was uncomfortable, facing my own pride, my fears, my unacknowledged grief. Sometimes it was liberating, realizing that I could shed old roles and live with greater honesty. Always it was transformative. This is why the Stoic path is not about chasing serenity for its own sake. It is about building the strength to face whatever truth arises. If serenity comes, let it come. If disruption comes, let it come. Both are part of the training. Both lead to wisdom if you are willing to endure them. The ones who awaken us do not always stay. They may vanish, retreat, or even push us away. But that does not lessen their impact, because their role was never to stay, it was to awaken. To remind us that we are more than the masks we wear, more than the roles we perform. They remind us that within us is a soul still capable of being stirred. And once stirred, the soul demands honesty. You cannot return to ignorance. You cannot pretend the mirror was never placed before you. You can only choose, will I run or will I face it? The Stoic choice is always to face, to welcome the disruption as fuel, to use the awakening not as a wound, but as a spark, because it is not the person you need to hold on to, it is the clarity they revealed. And clarity, once born, belongs to you alone. Part 4, Integration, Memory, and the Stoic Lesson. When someone awakens you, their presence becomes more than a passing memory. It becomes a symbol. And symbols do not vanish when the person leaves. They root themselves in the unconscious, in the architecture of your inner world, and they begin to live there. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This includes the unconscious movements of the soul stirred by another's presence. What you resist, he said, will persist and often grow stronger. This is why trying to forget someone who awakened you rarely works. The more you resist the memory, the more it takes shape in new forms. Dreams, metaphors, sudden emotions you cannot explain. But the Stoic does not run from these echoes. We sit with them. We examine them. We use them as tools for understanding ourselves. Marcus Aurelius trained his mind by writing nightly reflections. He did not write to record events. He wrote to reveal himself. In the same way, when someone awakens us, our work is not to erase them, but to ask, what truth did they awaken in me? What part of myself did I meet through their presence? Plato believed that beauty is not something we learn, but something the soul remembers. Real beauty, he said, stirs the memory of truth. This is why encounters that stir us deeply often feel ancient, as though they stretch beyond time. We do not simply meet the person, we remember the part of ourselves they mirrored. The Stoics remind us that every external event can serve our growth, if we choose to use it. The same applies to people. Some come to accompany us, some to test us, and a few arrive to awaken us. Their role is not to complete us, but to reveal what was missing within ourselves. Once revealed, the responsibility is ours, not theirs. Here lies the true Stoic lesson. We must not cling to the person, but to the transformation. If you anchor yourself in them, you risk longing, dependency, and disappointment. But if you anchor yourself in the clarity they revealed, you find strength, autonomy, and freedom. I have learned this myself. Those who awakened me were not meant to stay. Some even walked away abruptly, leaving me with questions and silence. But as years passed, I understood. Their absence was part of the teaching. They were never meant to provide answers. They were meant to leave me with questions that only I could answer through reflection, discipline, and practice. Socrates said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." And so, the gift of awakening is not certainty, it is wonder. It is the space to examine ourselves with new eyes. The presence of another may disrupt, unsettle, or even wound. But beneath it all, it has the power to open us. To integrate such an experience is to stop asking, why did they come? Why did they leave? And instead to ask, what did I discover about myself because they were here? Once you frame it this way, the power shifts. They no longer remain an unfinished story. You become the author who continues the chapter. Aristotle believed that excellence is not an act but a habit. When someone awakens you, they do not give you excellence. They give you the opportunity to practice it, to form habits of deeper honesty, greater clarity, more disciplined reflection. Their presence may have been the spark, but the fire is yours to tend. And here is the paradox. The soul does not cling to the person. It clings to the state they awakened. This is why forgetting is impossible. Not because you are trapped in the past, but because the past has become part of you. Their presence is woven into your transformation. Whether they return or not is irrelevant. What matters is the seed they planted. The Stoics did not fear disruption, nor did they worship comfort. They sought alignment with truth, and truth often arrives through unexpected messengers. A friend, a stranger, even an enemy. What matters is not their role, but the reflection they leave behind. So if you have been awakened by someone, do not diminish it, but do not idolize it either. See it as a call to step more fully into yourself, to enter the inner citadel, to live less in performance and more in presence. Because once you have been seen, not superficially, but deeply, it is nearly impossible to go back to blindness. And maybe one day they will return. Not for romance, not for completion, but because they too have reached the place where they are ready to face what you once reflected. Or maybe they will not. Either way, your work remains the same, to live awake. As a Stoic, I remind myself daily, the goal is not to be remembered, but to be transformed. The ones who awaken us are precious, but they are not the point. The point is the awakening itself. the clarity, the recognition of truth. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And sometimes that journey begins not with solitude, but with another soul who passes briefly through your life, leaves no map but lights a fire. So if this has stirred something in you, do not dismiss it. Let it unfold. Let it guide you inward toward the place that was waiting to be remembered. Because the real presence that lingers is not theirs. It is yours. In the end, this is the Stoic path. To use every encounter as a lesson, every disruption as training, every awakening as an invitation to step closer to wisdom. And once awakened, the only task left is to live accordingly.